They will not see the intricate web of community obligation that brought this loaf of bread to your table, the one you now share with a worried mother. They will not feel the crushing weight of her trust as she places her feverish child into your arms, her eyes pleading for a miracle you both know is not yours to give. They will not understand that your magic, the poultice of yarrow and plantain, the charm whispered over the water, is just a desperate, loving attempt to impose order on a universe that feels, to you, both divinely ordained and terrifyingly random. For most of human history, the greatest work was done not for a legacy, but for the simple, desperate prize of tomorrow. The one who has memorized ancient texts on the nature of pestilence, or the one who knows, from the bitter experience of a dozen empty chairs, precisely which well in the village is cursed. His daughter watches you from the corner, her face a mask of weary hope, her hands twisting in the folds of her coarse woolen tunic. You do not think of tiny, unseen things swimming in his blood. The world of the invisible is the realm of angels and demons, not of medicine. Your enemy is a presence you can feel, a foulness you can smell. It is the miasma, the bad air, a pestilent fog that seeps from stagnant water, from decaying things, from death itself. You know this because you have seen 25 winters come and go, each one carving a little more of the strength from your bones. You have 2 teeth missing, a gap your tongue worries at when no one is looking. Your hands are calloused, the nails permanently crescented with dirt and the stains of St. John's wort. Your face, the face that others see, is a mystery to you. It exists only as a phantom, a vague and distorted ripple in the surface of a rain barrel or a still puddle. Its feathery leaves crumble slightly, releasing a sharp, medicinal scent that speaks of staunching blood and breaking fevers. Beside it, a heavier pouch contains the powdered willow bark, stripped from a tree that drinks from the cold river and then pounded for hours with a smooth, heavy stone. The labor lives in the powder itself, a memory of aching shoulders and the rhythmic percussion of survival. A day when a physician, clean-handed and dismissive, will laugh at the very idea of balancing the body's humors, at your careful work with blood and phlegm, with black and yellow bile. A future historian, surrounded by books you cannot imagine, will write about your entire life, your whole world, as an age of darkness. They will define your time by everything you did not know. They will never see it from here, from inside this room, where the air is thick with the scent of boiled herbs and fear. This loaf of bread and a mended fence, these are the monuments to your work. We search for meaning in legacies carved in stone, in names that echo through centuries. But for you, the reward is this fragile acceptance. The invisible scale of village trust, which had tipped precariously towards suspicion, now settles back in your favor. For now, you have earned your place for another season. Ask yourself, what is the true nature of reward? Is it the applause of a crowd, or the quiet, continued beat of a heart that without you would have fallen silent? But just as often, his complex theories are a labyrinth leading nowhere, while the simple willow bark tea you prepare actually soothes the pain. It is a quiet, frustrating truth. A cure that works is still dismissed if its origins are in the soil instead of on a shelf. His knowledge is respected because it is captured, pinned to a page, like a butterfly. Yours is alive, and like all living things, it is considered wild, untrustworthy, and dangerous. Ask yourself, Whose wisdom holds more weight? I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. It refuses to be sown by prayer or sealed by time. The path back to the cottage is a ribbon of dark mud, and the rain, which fell like a judgment from God an hour ago, has softened to a fine, persistent drizzle. It seeps into the shoulders of your wool tunic, a familiar, damp weight. You are alone with your thoughts, or what passes for them, a quiet hum of herbs to be gathered, a prayer for the Reeves' ailing wife, the dull ache in your lower back. You are 25 years old. The latch on the satchel groans, a sound of worn leather and constant use. You swing the heavy flap open. This is your pharmacy, your university, your book of prayers. It is not a sterile environment. It is a portable piece of the earth. Inside, wrapped in linen pouches stained with the ghosts of past remedies, is the collected work of your year, a library of seasons. You reach in, your fingers recognizing each bundle by touch alone. There is the dried yarrow, collected on a dry, sun-scorched afternoon and hung from your rafters until brittle. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. Unchanged prayer. The day is coming. It is a seed, still buried deep in the soil of the future, but it is there. Not a parade through the village, not a song sung in your honor. Your victories are as quiet as the growing of the grass, while your failures would have been as loud as a collapsing church roof. A life saved is not an event to be celebrated. It is simply the world righting itself, a family remaining whole, a child who will now know his father's face. Later, the weaver himself, thin and pale, but alive, will promise to mend the broken section of your fence before the autumn winds arrive. But never, ever touch the glistening red berry of the nightshade. It is a quiet poison, the one that took your grandfather's cousin in a single, breathless night. Your library is the forest floor, its pages turned by the seasons. Your teachers are your ancestors, their whispers carried on the wind. The physician's knowledge is theoretical, 1,000 years old and filtered through a dozen translations. Yours is practical, immediate, tested by the fevers and fractures of your own bloodline. Sometimes his book learning is right. His talk of humors and miasmas might lead him to a truth. Ask yourself, when the only person who can help you is branded a sinner, is faith in them an act of courage or a desperate heresy born of pain? You give her the small pouch of herbs, your fingers brushing hers. It is a simple transaction, but it feels like a conspiracy, a quiet, necessary rebellion. If you were a stranger with no family to vouch for you, or a soul soured by gossip and grudges, you might lie fevered and alone, receiving no care at all. The community that held you so close could just as easily shut you out, leaving you to the mercy of the coming night. In a world bound by mutual debt, ask yourself, was it better to be loved and indebted, or to be free and utterly alone when the sickness bell began to toll? It gave people agency. It turned a mother's prayer from a desperate cry into a focused ritual. It was a flawed map, yes, drawn with trembling hands in the dark. But having a flawed map is infinitely more comforting than being lost in the wilderness with no map at all. We are here to understand that history is not just a collection of facts, but the lived, breathed, and often brutal experience of people just like us, armed with nothing but community, grit, and a desperate, flickering faith. We will explore the quiet rituals that gave life meaning and the deep-seated fears that governed every choice, from when to plant the barley to how to ward off the evil eye. This is a journey into the human heart, beating in a time of profound darkness and astonishing resilience. From the folds of her apron, she pulls a small, round loaf of bread. It is still warm from her hearth, and she presses it into your hands. The heat seeps into your skin, a living thing. It smells of yeast and smoke and a future that was almost stolen. She says nothing more. There are no grand pronouncements, no promises of gold. She just gives a small, grateful nod, a gesture that acknowledges a debt too deep for words, and walks away, back to the life you have returned to her. This is your triumph. The symbols in his book are as meaningless to you as the flight patterns of birds are to him. But your knowledge lives. It breathes in your memory, a vast and unwritten library curated by generations of hardship. Your mother's voice is the catalog, her calloused hands the index. She taught you on long walks through the woods, her lessons punctuated by the snap of a twig or the scent of damp earth. This leaf for a burn, child, chewed into a paste. This root for a deep cough, boiled until the water turns brown. The line between healer and heretic is thin as a shroud, and it is a line drawn by the fear of men. They fear what they cannot understand, and they understand nothing of the bloody, mysterious world of women. Isolde watches you, her fear a palpable thing in the smoky air. You are her only hope and her greatest risk. In your hands, you hold the knowledge to soothe her body and her soul, but its very existence could see you both condemned. You ease the pain of childbirth. They give you a share of their grain at harvest. It is an economy of survival, deeply personal and perilously fragile. We think of care as a transaction, a service with a price tag. But for them, it was a measure of a person's worth within the whole. Your payment was a recognition of your value, a solemn promise of future support, a shared breath against the cold. But this system had its own brutal logic. The irony is that this life-saving intimacy was also a cage. If he does not improve, if the heat does not yield, you may need to let some of the hot blood out. A small, shallow cut from a phlegm. A terrifying thought. But it is your medicine. It is your hope. Ask yourself, when faced with the terrifying randomness of suffering, is a flawed system of belief not a shield in itself? We see this as primitive, a wild guess in the dark, but it was a rational attempt to impose order on the chaos of the body. A declaration that human reason could map the landscape of illness. This is Sleepy History. We are here for the forgotten story, written not in ink, but in the calloused hands of a farmer, the hushed prayer of a midwife, and the gnawing hunger of a long winter. We will walk the muddy lanes and feel the biting wind. We will listen for the whispers of superstition that were, in truth, the only science available. You feel the gazes of others from their doorways, the sudden halt in conversation. This is the verdict. She stops before you, and there are no tears in her eyes, only a deep, weary relief that has hollowed out her face, leaving behind a profound calm. He woke this morning, she says, her voice as quiet as a prayer in an empty church. He asked for water. The fever is gone. She doesn't smile. Joy is a luxury. This is something far more fundamental. This is the simple, brutal continuation of life. He speaks of Galen and Hippocrates as if they were his personal acquaintances, his voice a low drone of absolute certainty. When the Lord gestures to the small bundle of herbs you brought, the physician glances at them with an expression that is not quite anger, but a deep, weary disdain, as if your collection of leaves and roots were a child's mud pies presented at a banquet. He is a man of the written word. You are a woman of the spoken tradition. You cannot read or write your own name, but this power is a double-edged blade. To know how to encourage life is to also know, in those desperate, whispered consultations, how to prevent it. To ease a woman's troubles is to meddle with the sacred rhythms of creation and destruction, a territory God and his priests claim as their own. Every remedy you offer is a gamble. A poultice that works is a blessing from the Virgin. The same poultice, if the patient worsens, becomes proof of a pact with the devil. It is a promise of breakfast, a spark of life in exchange for the one you are trying to save. "We will bring a loaf of bread tomorrow," he whispers, his voice rough with unshed tears. "And when the fence by your garden needs mending, I will do it. This is your payment. There is no ledger, no bill of services. Your work is simply a thread woven into the village's dense fabric of obligation and exchange. You mend their fevers, they mend your fence. The treatment, therefore, must be its opposite. It must be cooling and drying. Your mind, a library of inherited knowledge passed down through whispers and apprenticeships, begins to flip through its unwritten pages. You will need yarrow to make him sweat out the heat and break the fever's grip. Willow bark, chewed or brewed into a tea, to soothe the ache that makes him cry out in his sleep. And then a darker thought forms, a logical and terrifying conclusion. You pull the scratchy wool blanket tighter, the scent of wood smoke and damp clinging to it like a second skin. Outside, the world is still a charcoal sketch of itself, waiting for the reluctant sun. This is the quiet hour, the one that belongs to you, before the church bell rings and the day's relentless harvest of tasks begins. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't a story of kings and crowns, of glorious battles that reshape maps, but not lives. It is a public spectacle, a sermon on the consequences of misplaced faith. Your mistake would not just be your own. It would become a cautionary tale whispered over fires for a generation, a stain on your name that even your children might have to wash away. Then you see her by the well, the weaver's wife. She is not rushing, not wringing her hands. She walks with the slow, deliberate gait of someone who has carried a great weight and has only just set it down. He comes not for you or for anyone in your village, but for the Lord's delicate wife, whose cough echoes her husband's anxieties about producing an heir. He is dressed in dark robes that swallow the light, the fabric finer than anything you have ever touched. In the crook of his arm, he carries not a tool or a weapon, but a book. It is bound in leather, heavy with the weight of dead men's thoughts. He speaks a language you do not understand, Latin, a holy tongue reserved for God and for men like him. You listen, your hands busy grinding yarrow into a fine powder, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone a calming counterpoint to her panic. You attend the births, your hands guiding new life into the world, your voice a low hum that cuts through the screams. You know the massage that can turn a babe in the womb, the tea that can strengthen a mother's contractions, the salve that soothes the tearing. This knowledge is a currency more valuable than silver. It is a quiet power, a hidden scepter in a world ruled by iron fists and holy writ. A tea, you explain, your voice low and steady. Give him sips if the fever allows him to swallow. You have done what you can. The rest is a battle fought within the boy's own blood, a contest between his small strength and the will of the Almighty. As you gather your things, the father, Thomas, steps from the shadows near the door. He presses something small and solid into your palm. It is not the cold, dead weight of a coin. It is an egg, still warm from the nest. Its shell a fragile dome against your skin. Your diagnosis is a work of sensory art, not sterile measurement. You take the clay pot of his urine and hold it to the candlelight, studying its color and turbidity. You listen to the wet rattle in his lungs, a sound like stones in a sack. You feel the unnaturally smooth, dry texture of his skin and note the feverish flush in his cheeks. These are your data points, the language the body uses to tell its secrets. The evidence is clear. An excess of blood, a sanguine fever, too much of spring's heat trapped in his little body. The modern doctor in blue scrubs, eyes tracing the ghostly shapes on a glowing MRI scan, and you, leaning over a wooden bowl, staring into the cloudy depths of a patient's urine, are asking the exact same elemental question. What is wrong, and what can be done? 2 days pass. Each sunrise feels like a judgment. The sun climbs the sky, a searing eye searching for your failure. You busy yourself with mending, with foraging, with the endless grinding tasks that fill a life. But your thoughts are a tangled knot stuck in the dark, fever-scented room of the weaver. The village watches you from the corners of their eyes. A dropped bucket, a child's cry, it all feels like an omen. They are not waiting for a miracle. They are waiting for the tolling of the bell. Failure in your world is never private. Chapter 11. The Unwritten Library. The sound arrives before the man does. Not the tolling of a church bell or the lowing of cattle, but the crisp, rhythmic hoofbeats of a horse that has never pulled a plow. It is a sound of wealth, a sound from the city, and it stops outside the lord of the manor's hall. You stand by the kitchen door, hands stained with the green of crushed comfrey leaf, and watch him dismount. He is a physician. Each month, when the blood comes, it is not a relief, but a failure, another small death of hope. This is a conversation she cannot have with her husband, who sees only a field to be sown. She cannot take it to the priest, who would speak of sin and God's will, offering prayers instead of potions. So she comes to you. You are the keeper of these stories. You are the custodian of the body, a domain where men's authority falters. You don't measure with spoons or scales, but with your fingers, your eyes, your memory, a chain of knowledge passed from your mother and her mother before her, stretching back into the unwritten dark. You show Elspeth how to smear the warm poultice onto her son's chest, a gentle but firm pressure, and then onto the soles of his feet. It is a ritual as much as a remedy, an act of doing something in the face of God's terrible silence. From another small pouch, you leave a measure of dried willow bark. This is the science of your time, a grand, elegant system inherited from the learned men of ancient Greece. The theory of the four humors. Everything that exists, from the damp chill of winter to the fiery heart of a summer afternoon, is a delicate interplay of four essential fluids. Blood, hot and wet, like the air of spring. Yellow bile, hot and dry, the essence of summer. Black bile, cold and dry, the the melancholy of autumn, and phlegm, cold and wet, the soul of winter. This child, one of them has rebelled. But the fundamental contract between the sick and the healer, that sacred, unspoken pact, remains utterly unchanged. We still go to them in our moments of greatest fear and desperation. We still place our fragile, failing bodies into their hands, hoping for a cure, but often settling for just a little comfort, a moment of shared humanity against the terror. We are still mortified of the unknown that festers inside us, the betrayal of our own selves. Ask yourself, when your survival depends on the trust of others, is knowledge a tool for salvation, or is it merely a heavier stone to drag you down when the waters of fear begin to rise? They harness the very same deep-seated human need for reassurance and faith that you are stoking now, in a smoky hut, with a whispered charm and a prayer to the rising sun. She won't look at the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the mugwort, the pennyroyal, the raspberry leaf, as if their very presence is an accusation. She speaks in a rush of air, her words hushed, tumbling over one another. She talks of the monthly pains, a clawing beast in her belly that leaves her pale and breathless. But the true fear lies beneath that. It is the fear of silence, the fear of the empty cradle, the vacant space beside the hearth where a child should be. For now, there is only the task. You unwrap a small linen cloth, revealing the crushed herbs within. The sharp, clean scent of yarrow and the deeper note of thyme rise to meet the stale air. You pour a splash of hot water from a kettle by the hearth, and the room fills with a cloud of fragrant steam. The dark green powder transforms into a thick, gritty paste. You kneel, the rough spun wool of your tunic scratching your knees, and place the back of your hand against his forehead. It is a furnace, but you are not searching for a fever in the way we now understand it. The concepts of virus, of bacteria, of microscopic invaders, these are tales for a future you cannot imagine. For you, this small, fragile body is a universe in miniature, governed by the same forces that command the seasons and the stars. You are a physician of balances, and you are looking for an imbalance. Your work here in the grime and the fear is a quiet, profound testament to the relentless human drive to understand, to intervene, and to care for one another, even in the face of overwhelming ignorance. It is an act of faith, not just in a distant God, but in the person shivering before you. Have we truly evolved so much from this? We have traded the theory of the four humors for the elegant code of genomics. We have replaced your herbal poultices with targeted pharmaceuticals, synthesized in labs of impossible cleanliness. This fear of the powerful, knowledgeable woman has echoed through history, a low hum beneath the clamor of men's wars and decrees. The great witch trials that will one day burn across the land are not just about heresy. They are, in many ways, a war on female knowledge and autonomy, a violent tidying up of any power that exists outside the formal structures of the church and state. Today, the accusation is not yet witch in a courtroom, but a different label whispered in the market to discredit and silence. You know that a healer's true power lies not just in her satchel of dried leaves and roots, but in her ability to command belief, to build a fortress of ritual around a flicker of life. Ask yourself, when faced with the abyss, is a lie that heals more righteous than a truth that kills? The modern doctor in their white coat, with their calm, confident tone, and sterile instruments, is merely performing a newer, more scientific ritual, but a ritual nonetheless. Chapter 1. A Woman's Work. The knock on your door is as timid as a field mouse. It's a sound you know well, the sound of a secret. When you lift the latch, the evening cold slips in, clinging to the wool cloak of a young woman. Isolde. Her marriage is barely a season old, her face still holding the softness of a girl, but her eyes are old with a new and specific terror. She slips inside, her movements quick and furtive, as if the saints themselves are watching. The air in the small cot is thick with the scent of fear and wood smoke. It clings to the damp thatch above and the packed earth below. The boy's mother, Elspeth, watches your every move, her eyes wide and dark in the flickering candlelight. You see your own reflection in them, a shadow moving with purpose. Her hands, raw from lie and fieldwork, twist and untwist in the worn fabric of her apron, a silent prayer of knots. You work without speaking. Words are a luxury now. They are for comfort after or for grief. The air inside the weaver's hut is a physical thing, thick and heavy with the smell of unwashed wool, human sweat, and the sharp animal scent of fear. A single tallow candle sputters, its weak light casting long, dancing shadows that make the familiar room feel haunted. Beside the cold hearth, on a thin pallet of straw that rustles with his every pained movement, the boy lies. His small chest heaves, a desperate engine trying to pull air from the suffocating room. You draw a sacred symbol in the air. You whisper a prayer to a saint who understands this specific suffering, and you light a candle against the encroaching dark. You wield hope as your sharpest, most vital tool. For what else is there? When faced with the vast, crushing indifference of God's plan or nature's whim, you embody the most fundamental human response to suffering, the stubborn, desperate, and beautiful refusal to simply stand by and do nothing. A few too many failed cures, a weak harvest after your shadow passed the fields, a single bitter old woman with a dead cow, and that goodwill could evaporate like morning mist on the fens. This is the quiet terror of your power. It is not a power of spells or demons, but of knowledge passed from your mother and her mother before her. It is the wisdom of the earth, a thing that grows outside the stone walls of the church and the Lord's manor, and that is what makes it so dangerous. It is a story you are telling the body, a performance for the soul. Years from now, men in clean white rooms will give this phenomenon a name. They will call it the placebo effect, study it, and marvel at its power, as if discovering a new continent. They will see it as a fascinating quirk of the brain. But you are not studying it. You are living it. And what do you do when both seem to have turned their backs? They are casting two stones into the well of God's mercy, praying that one makes a splash. You are simply the one who knows the herbs, the one who is not afraid of blood, the one who answers the knock at midnight. Your value is measured in fevers broken and wounds closed. And your failures, they are measured in whispers, in averted eyes at the market, and the ever-present fear of being blamed for the inevitable. Ask yourself, when your worth is measured only by the lives you save, what does it make you when one is lost? A helper or a curse? You practice a science not of data and double-blind trials, but of pure, unfiltered observation and raw empathy. You fight the coming death with a leaf. You grind willow bark, knowing only that it eases the fire in the joints. You press a poultice of yarrow and moss onto a bleeding wound, trusting in a wisdom passed down from your mother, who learned it from hers, a chain of knowledge forged in the crucible of survival. You soothe a mother's terror, not with statistics, but with a ritual. The same knowledge of willow bark and yarrow that allows you to save a coughing child could, they now whisper, be used to blight the rye or curdle the butter. The difference is intent, a thing no one can see, a ghost that lives only in your own heart. Your safety depends entirely on the goodwill you have accumulated over the years, a currency more valuable and more volatile than silver. You have given her more than herbs. You have given her something to do, a weapon to wield against the suffocating helplessness that sickness brings. You understand, in a way you could never explain to the priest, that the mind must be healed alongside the body. Fear is its own plague, and despair a sickness of the soul that can rot a person from the inside out. This ritual, the whispered charm, the trinity of stirs, the sacred direction, it transforms a simple cup of tea into a potent act of hope. A doctor in a distant future might face a malpractice suit, a judgment of paper and gold. You face social ostracism, accusations of witchcraft, the pyre. The fear is not just of losing a patient, it's of losing your name, your safety, your entire world. So ask yourself, when your ability to survive is tied not to your skill, but to your neighbor's faith in it, what happens when that faith is shaken? Do you pray to the saint of healers for wisdom, or to the fickle god of luck for a different outcome? Ask yourself, when the only two cures on offer are faith and folklore, which do you choose for your child? The priest, with his promise of paradise for the soul, or you, with your fragile promise of one more sunrise for the body? For the terrified parents huddled in the corner, their faces pale masks of dread, there is no choice to be made. They will take both. They will accept the priest's Latin prayer and your bitter poultice, hoping against all hope that one of them works. The village sleeps behind shuttered windows, but for you, the night is when the real work is done, in the liminal space between a desperate prayer and the silence of the grave. In an age without emergency services, survival was a community affair, but the burden fell on specific shoulders. The blacksmith who could set a bone, the midwife who knew the secrets of birth, and you. You don't think of yourself as a healer. That is a word for saints. The complex chemistry of the plants you gather, the alkaloids and salicylates, is a language you will never learn to speak. Your entire world, your understanding of sickness, of the body, of life and death, is built upon a framework of knowledge that history will one day dismiss as quaint myth and dangerous superstition. And yet, you are not a fool. In this moment, crouched in your small, smoky hut, where the scent of drying herbs mingles with the damp wool of your patient's blanket, you are a pioneer. You are standing at the very dawn of medicine. It is a veiled threat, a seed of suspicion planted for all to see. A familiar chill, cold as a winter burial, runs down your spine. The line between a healer and a witch is not drawn by you, but by your neighbors. It is a line made of fear and sour milk, of a child's fever and a failed crop. It is a line that shifts with the seasons of their goodwill. To the priest, it is dangerously close to a devil's pact. To you, it is part of the cure. The boy sips the bitter liquid, his mother holding the cup to his lips, her hand trembling. She is no longer a passive spectator to her son's suffering. She is now a participant in his healing, an agent of the ritual. She helped turn him to the east. She holds the cup. She murmurs her own desperate prayers. You are the one they call. You are the one who closes the eyes, who feels for the last trace of warmth, who must confirm the final terrifying stillness. And with every failure, a little piece of the village's trust in you erodes like soft river stone. Another death like John's, and the whispers might turn from "she tried her best" to "her remedies are cursed." Your reputation for healing, the very thing that gives you purpose and a place, is as fragile as the life you fight to save. You are tolerated in the village, a necessary evil, because sometimes your poultices work when prayers seem to fail. But you were never trusted. You walk a tightrope over a chasm of accusation. The priest offers salvation for the soul. You offer relief for the body. In the medieval mind, it is not always clear which is more important, or if one can truly be healed without the other. This invisible war, fought with a cross in one hand and a handful of herbs in the other, is the central unspoken tragedy of your time. You walk into the homes of others when hope has fled, and you are expected to bargain with death on their behalf. As you follow Thomas into the raging dark, your thin leather shoes sinking into the sucking mud, you step on something slick and yielding, an unseen dead animal in the lane, its life extinguished as casually as a candle flame. You feel the familiar, sickening churn in your gut, a knot of cold dread and fierce, stubborn purpose. Chapter 16. A Legacy of Hope. You will not live to see the age of antibiotics. You will never witness the clean miracle of sterile surgery or walk the polished, antiseptic halls of a gleaming hospital. The very concept of a world without festering wounds, of a childhood without the constant shadow of fever, is a fantasy more distant than heaven itself. You will never know about the tiny, invisible organisms that swarm in a drop of water, the crawling life that turns a simple cut into a death sentence. They are small and hard, like river stones. She does not shout, she does not point. She simply mutters, her voice a dry rustle, just loud enough for the baker's wife and the tanner's boy to hear. Herbs can heal, she says, her gaze never leaving you, and herbs can harm. The words are a stone dropped into the quiet pool of your life. The ripples spread instantly. The baker's wife pulls her shawl tighter, her hand making a subtle sign against evil. The tanner's boy stops whistling. You look at the cooper's wife, her eyes fixed on the bowl. She doesn't see heresy. She sees a chance. You carry the remedy to the boy. He must sit up, you say, your voice low and calm, and he must face the east. The mother gently lifts her son. He is limp, his head lolling, but his eyes open a crack. Through the hut's single, shuttered window comes the faintest hint of gray light. The east, the direction of Jerusalem, of the rising sun, of the promise of resurrection on the final day. Is this magic? Now, when you see his widow at the market, she offers you only silence. It is a silence so profound, so heavy, it rings in your ears louder than any accusation, a constant tolling bell for the man you could not save. Every healer has a graveyard in their memory, a quiet plot of land where the faces of the lost are buried. In your world, death is not a sanitized event in a sterile hospital ward, managed by strangers in white. It happens here, in these huts, on these straw-stuffed pallets, surrounded by the smell of wood smoke and fear. a trial sent from God to test the faith of his parents, or worse, a divine punishment for some forgotten sin, a prayer skipped, a tithe unpaid, a lustful thought left unconfessed. Your work, this ancient knowledge of root and leaf, passed down from mother to daughter, is viewed with deep and abiding suspicion. It is folk knowledge. It is women's knowledge. And in the mind of a man like Father Michael, that makes it perilously close to paganism, a dark echo from the forests that the cross has not yet fully conquered. It is heavy with the weight of dried leaves, powdered roots, polished river stones, and a small, sharp knife. This bag is your inheritance, passed down from your mother and her mother before her. It is your burden. And in a world that fears women who know too much, it is your only real authority. This is the currency of your life, not silver coin, but crisis. You are summoned not to celebrate a birth or bless a good harvest, but only when life is fraying at its edges, when God seems to have turned his back. When the soul is sick, does healing come from a potion that alters the body or a purpose that rebuilds the self? We have new names for the pain, but the ancient cures of simple human contact have lost none of their power. The market air is thick with the smell of wet wool and damp earth, a scent you know as well as your own skin. Chickens squabble in wicker cages, and the butcher's cleaver falls with a heavy, rhythmic thud. It is a day like any other, until you see her, old Elspeth, whose face has been a map of grievances for as long as you can remember, stands by the fishmonger's stall. Who prize cow, the one with a coat like new cream, died in the night. Now, her eyes find yours across the muddy square. But at the end, you tack on the name of Saint Luke, the great physician, a holy seal on a pagan letter. You take the wooden spoon and stir, once for the Father, twice for the Son, a third time for the Holy Ghost. The liquid swirls, a muddy vortex. The priest, in his Sunday sermon, called these women's charms, his voice booming with the certainty of a man who has never had to watch a child's breath grow shallow. He spoke of hellfire for those who trusted hedgerow magic over pure faith and the prayers of a consecrated man. You were there. You tried everything in the small arsenal of your knowledge, the wisdom passed down from your own mother. You made hot poultices of mustard that blistered his skin, a desperate attempt to draw the sickness out. You brewed endless teas of horehound and coltsfoot, the bitter steam filling the small room with the scent of false hope. You even knelt on the cold floor, your whispered prayers for mercy mingling with the priest's formal Latin, each of you trying to bargain with a God who wasn't listening. Nothing worked. He steps fully into the hut, his dark robes seeming to drink the little light that filters through the smoke hole above. The air grows colder. He begins to pray, the Latin words a low, somber drone that fills the small space, a sound as ancient and unyielding as the stone of his church. He is not here to help you. He is here to compete with you. To the church, this boy's illness is not merely a matter of an unbalanced humor or a cursed draught of night air. It is a spiritual matter. Yet his breath comes in ragged white plumes, his eyes wide with a terror that has undone him. "It's my boy," he chokes out, the words nearly stolen by the gale. The fever. His breath rattles in his chest like a dying man's rosary. His mother says, she says he is burning from the inside. You don't ask questions. Questions are a luxury for priests and magistrates. You simply nod, your jaw tight, turning back to the dying warmth of the hearth. You reach for the worn leather bag beside it. A simple task, a purpose that does not require words, an occupation for hands that might otherwise tremble with remembered violence. Our understanding of mental health has become a complex cathedral of science, with its own precise language and powerful pharmacology. We have names for his pain: trauma, depression, moral injury. Yet the core of compassionate care remains exactly what you offered in the flickering firelight: presence, purpose, a gentle connection back to the living community. The remedies are comfort and a reason to get up in the morning. In our relentlessly connected future, they will seek this same silence in apps and retreats, a luxury bought with time and money. For you, it is not a leisure activity. It is a necessary ritual, a reminder that human sanity often depends on a connection to a world that is not human at all. It is a moment of profound peace, a careful restoration of your own weary spirit. His mother watches you, her face a mask of exhaustion, her hope so fragile it might shatter at a sudden noise. This is the moment. The medicine is ready, but it is not yet a cure. You lean over the bowl, and the words you murmur are older than the church. A low chant that speaks of binding and banishing, of water's power and earth's strength. You learned it from your own mother, who learned it from hers, a chain of whispers stretching back into the pagan fog. You can almost feel the cold seeping from its walls, a chill that has nothing to do with the evening air. He died last winter, and with him, a part of your standing in this village died too. You see it not as a building, but as a monument to your own limitations, a ghost of failure that greets you every single day. You remember the hacking cough, a sound like dry branches snapping, that echoed from that hut for weeks. A sound that filled his lungs with the fluid of his own body until he drowned on dry land. Just as you reach for a strip of clean linen, the heavy leather flap over the doorway is pushed aside, casting a long, stark shadow across the floor. It is Father Michael. He does not look at you. His eyes, dark and certain, are only for the boy shivering under the thin wool blanket. He carries no pouch of herbs, no tools of healing that you would recognize. In his hands, he holds only a small, roughly carved wooden cross and the unassailable authority of a God you are told to fear more than you love. The fabric scratches your skin, a constant reminder of your station, and it smells of its own history: wood smoke from 1,000 fires, the sharp, clean scent of rosemary hung from the rafters to ward off plague, and something else, something metallic you can never quite place: the scent of your trade, the scent of old blood. When you unlatch the door, a man stands there, his face a pale mask in the gloom, rain plastering his thin hair to his skull. It is Thomas, the weaver, a man whose hands are deft with a shuttle, but clumsy with panic. You do not ask him to speak of the war. You do not pry at the locks on his heart. You simply share the silence, letting your presence be a quiet anchor in the churning sea of his thoughts. An hour passes. The only sounds are the crackle of the fire and the slow, rhythmic breathing of two people in a room. Later, you speak to his son. The fishing nets are torn from the last storm, you say. Your father's hands were always the cleverest with a knot. You suggest he be asked to mend one. This is not a task. It is a meditation. Each plant has a personality, a purpose known to you through touch and scent. You are not taking from the earth so much as you are collaborating with it. In a life defined by the needs of others, by births that tear, fevers that burn, and sorrows that break, this is your time of quiet autonomy. Here, the village healer, the woman whispered about at the well, dissolves. She is simply a woman walking in the woods, speaking a silent language with the green and growing world. The clay bowl is cold against your palms, a small dark moon in the flickering light of the tallow lamp. Inside, crushed willow bark and dried yarrow swim in a thin broth of honey and boiled water. Your knuckles are chapped, the skin around your nails ingrained with the dirt of the herb garden. Outside, the wind whispers of a coming frost, a familiar threat that makes every cough in the village sound like the first toll of a funeral bell. In the corner of the hut, on a straw pallet, the cooper's son burns with fever. The path home is worn into the earth like a scar, familiar and unchanging. But as dusk bleeds across the sky, turning the clouds the color of a fresh bruise, you slow your steps. Ahead is the cottage of the old carter, John. It's just a hut of wattle and daub like any other. But to you, it has become a tombstone. The door is barred. The small window, usually bright with a tallow lamp, is a dark, vacant eye staring back at you. Section 4. The Priest's Shadow. The scent of bruised yarrow and crushed willow bark fills the air, a green, bitter perfume against the lingering smell of wood smoke and sickness. Your knuckles are white around the smooth stone pestle as you work it in the small wooden bowl, grinding the herbs into a dark, hopeful paste. The boy's breaths are shallow, like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. You have seen this fever before. It is a thief that comes in the night, stealing the heat from the hearth and putting it into the blood. Sleep is a shallow pond in the dead of winter, its surface easily broken, and you are a restless swimmer, haunted by the ghosts of fevers past. The wind howls through the wattle and daub of your cottage, a familiar, hungry song of damp and cold. It is a living thing, this wind, probing the cracks for a way in, carrying the stench of the village lane, a river of mud, night soil, and refuse. You pull a rough wool cloak over your thin linen shift. You looked at the terrifying chaos of the human body, the fevers, the seizures, the wasting illnesses, and instead of turning away in fear, you rolled up your sleeves and got to work. Your tools were earth and water, leaves and roots, passed down through generations. Our tools are data and steel, chemicals and code, discovered in sterile labs. But the prayer, whispered in the quiet, desperate hours of the night, as we stand watch over a loved one's labored breathing, remains exactly and eternally the same. You are not a physician of the body, with its predictable fevers and breaks. You are a reader of the human heart, and his is a text full of grief. You are treating not an imbalance of humors, but a wound to the soul. You do not return with a bitter draught. You bring him a cup of dark wine, warmed with cinnamon and honey, a drink of celebration, not of sickness. You place it in his hand, and his fingers, stiff with disuse, curl around the warmth of the clay. You sit with him. John's wort, a burst of sunshine in the gloom. You know to crush a petal between your fingers. It bleeds a reddish oil, the very blood of the saint, potent against the melancholy that can settle on a soul like a winter fog. It is a belief whispered from mother to daughter, a secret that feels older than the church bells. They call it devil's flight, a charm to keep the dark spirits at bay. But you wonder, is it the plant that chases the demons away, or the simple, hopeful act of gathering it? The belief in miasma, a fiction, has led you to the gospel of ventilation and cleanliness. You are saving him for the wrong reasons. Our modern world was shaken by a plague carried on the air we share. We sealed our homes and then threw open our windows. We feared the space between us. Your bad air and our aerosol transmission are distant cousins, born of the same terrifying realization. Ask yourself, when faced with an invisible enemy, does the name you give it matter more than the ritual you invent to survive it? Ask yourself, is a self you choose but must constantly defend more liberating than a self that is given to you, a heavy cloak you can never take off? Your pharmacy was the forest and the field, a living reminder that for most of human history, healing was not synthesized in a lab, but gathered by hand with hope under an unpredictable sky. You pull out the yarrow and the beeswax. The child in the next room is burning with fever, and the night is long. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. The sound that begins it is not the storm, but a fist against your door. Not the polite rap of the reeve demanding a tax of grain, nor the confident knock of the priest, a sound that promises salvation for a price. This is a frantic, hollow drumming that speaks of the soul's desperation, a sound that begs where prayer has failed. You are already awake. You were a human being, using the very best tools you had to solve the most enduring human problem: how to live, and how to keep those you love alive. You feared the devil's breath in a sudden night wind, but you still walked into the storm to help a birthing neighbor. You believed sickness was a pestilence carried on bad air, a miasma, but you still unlatched the shutters to let in the morning light. His son, a man with his father's shoulders but not his haunted gaze, takes you aside. He asks for a remedy, a poultice, a tincture of St. John's wort to drive out the darkness, an elixir to warm the blood and restore the balance. He speaks of humors as if they are invading spirits to be exorcised. You look past the son, at the father. You see the truth. There is no herb that can heal a memory. No potion can wash away the blood that lives only in the mind. The air is cool, fragrant with damp earth, decaying leaves, and the ghost of last night's rain. This is your sanctuary. You move with a practiced eye, a hunter of a different sort. Your gaze sweeps past the common ferns and brambles, searching for the quiet signatures of power. There, the serrated feathery leaves of yarrow, a plant that can staunch the bleeding of a wound as surely as a prayer to St. Jude. You snap the stems, their herbal scent rising to meet you. A little further, you spot the bright, star-like flowers of St. The air must be made to move, to be chased out like a thief. Finally, you pull a sprig of dried rosemary from your pouch. Its scent is a sharp, clean promise. Burn this, you say, placing it in her hand. Let the smoke be your weapon. A good scent is a shield against a foul one. It is a theory born of the senses, a world away from science, and yet it is accidentally brilliant. The alcohol in the wine is a weak antiseptic. The fresh air disperses the concentration of bacteria. Shame is not a private feeling of regret. It is a public judgment, a sudden coldness in the market, a door that closes as you approach. Honor is not a sense of inner pride. It is your standing in the community's eyes, a currency more valuable than coin. It is the extra measure of grain from a grateful farmer, the respectful nod from a man who might otherwise see only a woman alone. You are what you do, and more importantly, what others say that you do. Your reflection lives only in their eyes. They connect you not to a distant, walled-off university, but to the soil crying out for rain, right outside your door. This intimate connection to the tangible is a forgotten language. Our medicine now comes in sterile plastic bottles, its origins an abstract mystery, its power printed in a list of side effects we cannot pronounce. We trust the institution, the pharmacist, the brand name on the box. You trusted the soil, the sun, and the accumulated, whispered wisdom of your ancestors. We are here to uncover the forgotten rituals, the desperate superstitions, and the fierce, fragile humanity of people who lived and died without ever knowing their lives would one day be a story. They were not just statistics of a dark age, they were us in a harsher season. If you love immersive real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. We still live in terror of the invisible, the virus, the carcinogen, the genetic flaw lurking in our code. We still seek rituals, cleanses, and routines to give us a precious sense of control over the chaos of our own biology. We still tell ourselves stories to make sense of our pain and our losses. We have more data, more technology, more science. But our core anxieties, our deepest hopes for a life free from suffering, truly any different from yours. You were not a backward person living in a primitive time. His eyes are open, but they see a field in Flanders, or a frozen river crossing, or the face of a friend whose name is now only a whisper on the wind. He does not eat. He does not speak. The silence in his home is heavier than a shroud. His family says he has a melancholy, a word of learned men, a diagnosis of cold, dry black bile, flooding the vessel of his soul, chilling his spirit from the inside out. This is the crossing of a threshold, not just from field to forest, but from duty to self. You step under the canopy of oak and ash, and the world changes. The sun, once a broad, warm hand on your back, becomes a scattered treasure of gold coins dappling the forest floor. You are in your true church now. Here, there are no frightened patients grasping your hands with a desperate, sweaty grip. No suspicious priests whose questions carry the flinty edge of accusation. There is only the low thrum of bees, a constant, holy hum. You are trying to purify the flesh, to wash away the physical stain of the corrupt air, to scour the decay with something clean and sharp. When you are done, you look at the heavy wooden shutters, barred against the evening chill. Open them, you command, your voice low but firm. Let the wind have this room. The girl hesitates, looking from the shutters to her shivering father. Fear of the night air wars with fear of your authority. You explain that the sickness festers in stillness. You are the healer, a name whispered with a mix of hope and suspicion. You are Elspeth's daughter, a title that carries the weight of your mother's reputation, her own skills with root and leaf, and the manner of her death. You are the woman who lives by the old oak, a description that sets you apart, marking you as one who dwells on the edge, near a tree that remembers a time before the church bell ever rang. This self is a collage of whispers, reputations, and responsibilities. John's wort must be harvested at noon on the longest day of the year, when the sun's power is absolute. You know the moonwort must be gathered under a full moon, its celestial namesake lending it the power to undo locks and mend iron. Are these superstitions? Perhaps, but they are also a form of respect, a quiet contract between you and the wild. It is a way of acknowledging that the power you wield is borrowed from the natural world, not commanded by you. Your tools are not gleaming, cold steel, but wood, stone, and plant fiber. Their lives are hymns sung in stone and gold, echoing down the centuries. This is a different kind of history, a quieter one, whispered in the dark. It's the history of survival, written in the calloused hands of the farmer, the soot-stained face of the blacksmith, and the worried eyes of the mother. We're here to feel the scratch of a wool tunic on our skin, to smell the fear in a fever-sick room, and to understand the heavy weight of a sky filled with saints and devils. The historian will see the ignorance, but from their safe distance, they will miss the humanity. They will catalog the superstition, but overlook the love that fueled it. Look around you now, not in this smoky cottage, but in the world you, the viewer, inhabit. We chase wellness with an almost religious fervor. We buy tinctures and supplements that promise vitality, following diets that claim to purify our bodies of unseen toxins. We place our unwavering faith in wellness gurus who speak with the same confident authority as a medieval priest describing the geography of hell. Chapter 15. The Unseen Wounds. The man Alaric has not moved from the hearth since the bells for matins. He was a soldier once, a man whose body was a map of scars from battles you cannot name. But the wound that holds him now is one no blade could make. The fire sputters, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to cling to him, pulling him deeper into the wood of his chair. The weight of the village falls from your shoulders with each step. Behind you, the thin cries of a feverish child and the thicker silence of his praying mother fade into the drone of the afternoon. The path, worn smooth by generations of feet like yours, leaves the cloying scent of wood smoke and human worry behind, trading it for the clean, sharp smell of sun-baked hay from the common fields. Your basket, woven from willow you stripped yourself last spring, feels light in your hand, an empty vessel waiting to be filled with purpose. It has settled in this room, thick and heavy, and it is poisoning him from the outside in. You take a strip of clean linen from your satchel and unstopper a small flask of wine. It is thin and sour, but it is all you have. As you soak the rag, the daughter's eyes flicker to the flask. A waste of good drink, but she holds her tongue. You press the damp cloth to the wound. Alaric groans, a low animal sound. You are not trying to kill germs you cannot imagine. A shape, a smudge of dark hair, the suggestion of a chin. There is no polished glass to capture your soul, no silvered surface to tell you who you are. The church tells you that vanity is a sin, that to gaze upon one's own image is to court the devil. It is a convenient commandment for a world without mirrors. Your identity is not a thing you build from within. It is forged for you in the village crucible, hammered into shape by the needs and fears of others. You are not simply a person, you are a function. There is a chunk of sweet-smelling beeswax for salves that seal a wound against the world, and a clay pot of foul, green-tinged ointment made from rendered goose fat and the root of comfrey, the great knit-bone. Its stench is a promise, and tucked in a corner, a bundle of dried lavender, its purpose twofold: to calm the raging heat of a wound, but more importantly, to calm the frantic heart of the mother who watches over it. Each item is a story, tied to a place, a season, the specific slant of light. You know that the frost on the inside of the window pane tastes like iron. You trace a line through it with a finger, watching the world outside swim into a gray, fractured view. A world of mud, wood smoke, and a sky the color of a bruised plum. This is your morning. This is your life. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't a story of kings in their castles or knights on glorious quests.